evening, everyone, and welcome to ACMI Conversations. Took me 4 goes for that. My name's Ari, I'm the producer for public programs here. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that tonight we meet on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past, present and future, to any elders who may be present in the audience tonight, and of course every member of the audience has chosen to join us for this amazing panel. So, we've got an amazing set of speakers here for you tonight to explore body politics and through the lens of the moving image. We'd just like to let everyone know who hasn't known. Unfortunately, Bex could not be here with us tonight. She's taken ill. But we have an amazing person who's managed to step in at the last moment, which is Triana Hernandez. You'll hear a little bit more about Triana in just a second, but first I'd like to introduce you to our host and and moderator for this evening, Kelly Jean Drinkwater. A round of applause, please. Kelly Jean is an interdisciplinary artist, a filmmaker, a performer and an activist recognised for her voice in radical body politics. Her work uses the body as a site to explore themes of identity, queer and feminist theory, and society's obsession with perfection. Reoccurring themes are ideas of taking up space and how this reclamation can transform realities and reimagine the potential of self and society. Recent film works include Monstergrass as part of the Love Bite series for ABC iView that celebrated queer filmmakers and their stories. And of course, Nothing to Lose, an independent feature documentary exploring the lives of body positive dancers, and of course, which is having its Melbourne premiere here at ACMI tonight. Kelly Jean, over to you.
Hello. Hi, is this on? No. What about now? Okay, great. I know, I love doing it. What about now? Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I'm very excited to be here at ACMI hosting this panel. I wanted to introduce our speakers, first of all. Starting at the end, we've got Sam Matthews. Sam is a director with a decade of experience in post-production, and her newest project, Unboxed, you might have seen, is a 6-part series about gender-diverse artists, was launched on ABC iView in April 2018, this year, yeah. And last year she directed a video starring members of the South Australian trans community called We Are Visible in 2017. Sam is also the co-owner and head of post at Beyond Content based in Adelaide, Australia. Thanks for being here, Sam.
My pleasure.
Cool. Are all our mics on? Oh, we're not sure.
What about now? Hey.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not funny.
Coming to Triana Hernandez. So Triana is a Peruvian writer and music video director living in Melbourne. As a music video director, her work uses magic realism technique to draw attention to the political within the poetic and artistic. Her work often subverts old music video tropes and narratives and speaks to find new and empowering ways to celebrate women, people of colour and queer narratives. Triana's work constantly pushes for representation and opportunities for artists that challenge Australia's white, straight, male-centric music industry. And Triana is also a music journalist, and her interviews have been featured in publications like Noisy ID and Swampland. So thank you, Triana, for being here.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
And here to my right, we have Candy Bowers. Candy is a comic and actor, a playwright, lyricist, and Afro-fashionista. She's also a multidisciplinary writer, performer, filmmaker, the artistic director of Black Honey Company. Candy has pioneered a fierce genre of contemporary performance that delves into the heart of radical feminist dreaming and earned her the 2018 Geoffrey Milne Award for Outstanding Contribution to Independent Theatre. Candy's also worked on TV shows like Get Crackin', Newton's Law, The XPM, True Stories with Hamish and Andy, and is a regular correspondent on... Are you a correspondent? On Tonightly with Tom Ballard. I know it's gone, but you did it. Yeah, you've got a mic in your hand, babe.
I did it. Had great conversations with executive producers on that show.
Yeah, I'm sure. Which we're going to find out about in a minute. So I guess I'll start with you, Sam. We don't have to go in a line, but I'll just do that because, So I've got the pleasure. I saw Unboxed at Frameline in San Francisco, where we both showed our work, which was great, and that's where I got to meet you. And I also forgot until I watched that this is.
We met before then.
We did, because I'm in one of them, but like total cameo. But I totally forgot until we were watching it, and I went, that's right. That's quite funny. We were in a friend's, Beau's work. But it was so exciting to see. Like, for me, it was great to be in Frameline, which is a massive queer film festival in San Francisco, and see our work in a totally different context. How was it showing it to, like, American audiences as opposed to...
Amazing, actually, yeah. And it's funny, Beau, who Kelly mentioned, he was one of the featured artists in the show, and they loved Beau's episode. Yeah, they squealed at Beau's episode. So yeah, really interesting responses, and the right audience too. And I found the American audience to be really engaged with cinema in general, hissing and clicking and cheering, which I don't think there's that level of interaction here in Australia. It was cool.
So I read an interview that you gave about making Unboxed, and in this interview, and if this is quoted wrong, please tell me, but you said that making Unboxed was a way for you to tell your story through other people. Did you say that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I didn't say it just now, but I at one point did.
At one point. Can you talk to me about that?
Sure. So I guess in a nutshell, my background, my career is in filmmaking, so I'm an editor. But when I came out about 6 years ago and transitioned, that really prompted me. I was really inspired by the stories of the transgender community, who I had sought out to understand more about and more about myself, and I just felt like it was too good an opportunity to to miss. Now I'm all full of double negatives, but really I felt like I had to kind of combine my passion for filmmaking with my passion for advocacy through all that I'd learned through meeting people in my community and hearing all of their amazing stories, which I hadn't thought had been told before. And Unboxed was a great opportunity to ground those stories in something different, like art and different forms of art, because it showed that we amount to more than our genders. That's one aspect of who we are, but we're actually, we have many talents. So, and as far as my story goes, I felt, I mean, it's possibly stating the obvious to people in my position, but I felt like I had no representation growing up on screen or in the media, and if you can't see it, you can't be it. So I really felt like there needed to be more stories out there to make the journeys of gender diverse people a little easier.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that I've noticed as a common thing between all of us, is that a lot of us have made the work we make because we never saw it. I think that's pretty much what inspires me to make work. When I started at art school, I started making photographic work because I was the fattest person that I knew. So I was like, all right, I'll just be in them then. And then it kind of moved on from that. And it's so, this idea of seeing yourself reflected is huge. And especially when it comes to moving image, I think, because, in film and television is the most accessible kind of medium that we do have, especially as kids. And I think that's why it seems there's such a massive hole in that, especially from when I was a kid. But it's really interesting. What I love is how we've kind of come to our careers through necessity, and through DIY kind of things. Triana, do you want to talk about how you got into filmmaking and if it was a similar kind of idea around...
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely agree that necessity was a really big part of it. I mean, I haven't studied film. I didn't go to any university. I didn't receive any training. I just grew up watching so many music videos and seeing so many amazing, like artwork being put on MTV and all these music channels, and it was a great form of escapism for me because I grew up in Peru in the middle of terrorism. So when I moved to Australia, I thought, oh, great, like now I'm living in a place where everyone is like free and happy. And it wasn't the case at all. So I feel like that sense of like, because when I was watching music videos here, what I would see reflected on the screen was the problem, which was, you know, like predominantly white, cis, male-centric narratives being represented in music videos, and a lot of male white gazes being the directors behind that. And so I was really bored. And I just thought, you know, like, I feel like I really want to see these stories, you know, being filmed in a much more passionate and engaging way. Like, I actually started going to, like, I started making friends with, like, Swinburne University people just so that I could go to their, like, their classes and stuff. Like, I literally did that for a year. And, like, I remember they were all trying to do, like, short films about, you know, like, women and, like, you know, like, domestic violence. And there was a lot of, like, you know, like abuse represented on the screen. And I realized that none of the directors was actually engaging with the actual subjects. And basically, I was like, okay, I've learned all the technical stuff just from watching, you know, like infiltrated into these spaces. But now I want to go and, yeah, just do it on my own, because I feel like if music videos were a source of like freedom or escapism, sorry, for me, I kind of wanted to provide that for people here, and bring like a new perspective into the music video industry here, which I think has been really, really stale for a really long time. Mm-hmm. So yeah, definitely necessity / like, yeah, just
boredom.
Yeah.
And wanting
You
to,
know.
yeah, totally.
If I can just add one tiny thing there, sorry, is that one time I described that to a friend by saying that I felt like all these really complex narratives that are like beautiful books were being captured by people who are the herald sun. So it's basically like all these herald sun lenses trying to encapsulate the majesticness of a beautiful long novel or saga. And it just doesn't work. You know? It's just not captured because they're the herald sun, and what they're trying to capture is the essence of a book. So, yeah.
Yeah, so, okay, so I see what you're saying there, yeah. I mean, it's kind of like this idea of authenticity or lived experience. That's what I constantly talk about is, you know, I get asked to do things like this panel and do things that, or submit to different sort of things, or because I know that, or do public speaking because I'm asked because I have this authenticity or this sort of authority on things. And I think, while that's awesome, I think, you know, that's great that people do that. I also sometimes find that kind of idea of, I find that idea a little bit uncomfortable, because quite often I want to make work about other people's lives as well, you know, and I think, you know, it's this idea of being the kind of, like, we're all in our own work, and it's this idea of being the sort of front runners or the front line. And I wanted to ask you, Candy, because I know that you're in a lot of your own work. Do you find that that you kind of feel a little bit of responsibility, or maybe a little bit kind of expected to be in your own work, and is that something that you have any kind of struggle with, or do you just love to make your, you know, it's kind of like that thing of like, do you want to always be in your work and be the sort of focus, or are you do you know what I'm saying? Is that a question?
I'm tired, definitely. There's a burden. Once or twice I tried to take myself out of work, and they contractually said, well, it was in the I tried to break the contract, and they were like, no, it has to be you. So that was weird. But I've successfully done it. Like, I'm not performing in Hot Brown Honey anymore.
Yeah.
Just got back from Sweden, those ladies, and, you know, it's hard work. And, of course, then the work gets successful, so you can't be in everything, which is really positive, I think. So I'm doing a little bit more directing, and I really enjoy that. I think I like the lazy Susan. I like having, like, a lot of stuff, but I'm also very aware, like, I think it sometimes astounds me, you know, and I was saying, like, the first time I saw myself in an Australian television show was Newton's Law 2 years ago. The show we did the showing, I don't know if you know it, but it's like starring Claudia Carvin and a whole bunch of Australian people that I grew up watching on TV. And I thought I was going to be just, you know, it's a funny scene. I thought it would be funny, but I was like racked with emotion and a feeling of deep, deep sadness. Yeah. And I could only unpack it to feel like, why has it taken so long for someone who looks like me or is my size to be on a show, on the ABC, talking with my accent, and like this deep, sad feeling. And at the same time, I was waiting for an Uber and it was sort of raining, and this sort of intern from the writer's room was like, oh my God, you were so funny in the show. But when they were describing like who was going to come on next, and they just sort of described this character, Sasha, I didn't imagine it was like someone that was like, and I looked at her and I was like, what word is she going to use? She's going to say fat, she's going to say black, she's going to say, what's she going to say? I was like, what is she going to say? Because they didn't describe me, they described an asymmetrical haircut as opposed to a black woman or whatever. And I went, that's an interesting moment, that's interesting. Problematic show, lots of shows are problematic. Most of the shows are problematic, all the shows are problematic, really. But yeah, I like being in and out, but I am aware, like when I did get cracking and I got, for some reason they started using this shot of me on the couch with the Kates as a hero, which meant it was in TV Week, which means I'm the first woman from the African diaspora to be in an Australian comedy show and to be in the pages of TV Week last year, 2017. Again, it's bittersweet. My nieces or I know from the family that they go wild when they see me and stuff or hear my voice or see it. And you think, geez, this isn't my, an NAB commercial is not my greatest achievement in the world. But the amount of people that write to me that say, thank God it's you, or thank God I see you, I see someone like you, I realise the impact. And then it's the optics.
Yeah.
And all I want now is to work out how to people the industry and work out, ways of just like, it's like when there's a small crack in the wall and you're like, quick, and you're like just like pulling the people through the crack as you go, it's about to close, like that vibe. Because it's
like to
really
see you squeeze me through that crack.
It's fucking bleak. It's bleak. It's bleak. And being on the commercials and stuff and the cruise. Ooh, the cruise.
The cruise,
You're
yeah.
just like, I'm going to have to run this shit because I can't handle the words in their mouths and the things they are and the culture.
Yeah. How does it differ, like moving? Because, you've had a very illustrious, wonderful career, haven't you? And, but I think of you as a theatre person.
Yeah.
And was that a choice when you came out of NIDA? Do we like theatre is my jam, that's what I want to do? Or was it more, in terms of the TV film context, was it harder for you to get into the TV film context than it was for you to get
I was
into?
told point blank there was no work for me. I was not a bankable artist and I didn't represent Australia.
In terms of film and TV or just in general?
Agents, casting agents. I came out in 2001 into an industry that was like, you won't get work here. But that was stage and screen. The difference was, because I studied stage stuff and I was a little bit more into the DIY of that, that I just did it with Sister She. and that got picked up. I think, so yeah, the film stuff has been more, it's probably just because it wasn't what I studied first.
Okay, yeah.
But obviously the impact and the reach is so different and so much bigger. And so it was absolutely a barrier. Absolutely a barrier. I mean, most ads and stuff, like I've probably booked something like, I don't know, 70% of the things that if you like the picture, oh my God, I can probably do it. And it's like Goofball Island or something. Like, it's very easy. It's very much easy for me. I know I have a lot of friends that are like, I hate the ad thing. I'm like, I find it super easy.
Yeah.
And I go, so I know straight away, the minute I dipped my toe in the pond, it was about access and it was about who the door's open to. Because if I'm getting in the room and booking it, but I couldn't get in the room, do you know what I mean, in the first place?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that it just comes down to things like, for me as well, like I started doing things that I could do by myself that didn't need a producer, didn't need to be commissioned, didn't need all that stuff. Just doing it myself, which was imagery and performance, I guess I wouldn't say. Like, it was weird queer art performance that you do on stage at 3 a.m.
That's exactly where I started as well.
It's like, I think I'm going to do this thing. Let's just do it. Great, amazing. But and then then you end up doing other things at the MCA, which is basically the same shit, but they just cotton on and they go, oh, it's so underground and amazing. Let's just do it at the MCA instead of the Red Rally or whatever. Anyway, Sydney talk.
I kind of feel like when you were talking about authenticity and what you've been talking about, I kind of feel like, because when you grow up in an environment where you're consistently told that you don't belong and you don't fit in and that you don't represent and that you're not this and you're not that, but then you still resiliently know that you are powerful and you're empowered and you have something to say, you become a self-made person, and then doing a DIY project is actually like almost like an extension of who you've been all your life, It's not oh, fuck, how am I going to do this project all on my own? It's like, I've done my whole life on my own.
Yeah.
We've all, I'm sure. And so I definitely feel like, when people kind of, I think, compliment our work, what they don't realize is that our work is so good because we are so used to hard work and perfectionism and like laboring down, like ironing down every detail, all under, our own vision,
Yeah.
I think that takes a lot of strength, and I think people fail to realize that that's where it's coming from. Like, it's not like, oh, look, it's a person of color directing a person of color, that's why the project is good. No. It's because you're seeing a very, self-made person, very resilient, who's very authentic, knowing how to find the authenticity in what they're filming. And I feel like maybe that's something that we also all
Yeah, absolutely.
share. Yeah.
And it's an extension of how we live our lives, I think. Like navigating the world as a person who is othered has its own wonderful joys, mountains and valleys. And, I think that just also is inherent in the work we make as well, as, because we need to survive like this and we need to move through the world as who we are. So, it does feel like a natural extension of how we've had to be. Sam, I wanted to ask you, speaking of being sort of an extension of yourself in your work, with Unboxed, could you talk a little bit about the fact that originally you were meant to be in you are in the films, but your role in that got kind of cut and left on the
Sure.
editing floor.
Yeah.
And you said to me earlier that it was an interesting navigation around being the director, but also being asked to be in the project. Was that how you pitched it, or was it similar to Candy's, where they were like, you have to be in it because you're the trans director and we want you in it,
Sure. Look, I was prepared to be in it from the beginning. But I also was very aware of how short the series would be in terms of screen time. And so actually from the get-go, I was on the fence about it. I thought my inclusion in the series might be the glue that holds the episodes together. But at the same time, I couldn't really see how that would work in terms of screen time. So the ABC, I met with them and they were really keen on me being in it and it being about my journey to visit these other people. And so we had that dialogue and, you know, I found that flattering that they wanted me to be in it, but at the same time I kind of thought, I don't know if this is really going to work because it's also a blending of styles. It's a documentary style, very fly on the wall, combined with me being like a journalist presenter, which I'm not at all trained in, talking about other people who can represent themselves much better than I can. So, look, we had the luxury of well, my producers skillfully scheduled it so that I could do these bits in front of camera and talk about my journey visiting these people. But as soon as we got to the edit, I could see it just wasn't really working and that the other people, there was just so much brilliant content from the other people that it would be a better series. And the ABC agreed. We showed them some rough cuts and they said, yeah, no, cut you out of it. And I was like, yes. So it was good. Yeah. No, I didn't mind the process.
Yeah, great. I mean, I feel the same thing in some of my work. Like I'm in most of my films. And I don't mean to be, I promise, but it's kind of like I end up making films about projects that I've made. And especially with Nothing to Lose, I really actually didn't want to be in it. Like I was like, no, this is about a cast of fat queer people. I want to know about them. And I don't want to be, you know, the sort of only person in the film. Or, you know, like I don't need to center myself in this. There's many fat people that do many things that are great. You know, and I think that quite often I get, you know, I feel like I have to be a spokesperson, and that kind of bothers me. You know, I don't want to do that all the time, and so, but it's
a good starting point, isn't it? But then, you know, as we were talking before, like you can only really be truly representative of yourself. You can't represent an entire group of people because everybody's experience is difficult, and the pressure is on you to do that, and you want to.
Yeah. Well, that's what it is for me. It's about nuance. It's about not just one person's experience. It's about, you know, the nuance. And one of the things that people said about the film was like, everybody's so different. And I was like, yeah. Like, you know, we're fat. Yeah. We're all queer, which is, you know, there's two similarities. Other than that, we're all different human beings, you know, and it's interesting. But I also really wanted to push that because, you know, anyway, I could ramble on about that. But it's an interesting kind of thing where something is centred around one person, but then how to sort of navigate giving that nuance kind of thing. Do you know what I'm saying?
I think that's a good kind of entry into talking about tokenism too, you know, like sure there's representations of certain kinds of people or marginalised groups, but you'll never actually break away from any kind of a stereotype unless you see multiples of those people. Yeah.
I was going to say, a friend of mine just wrote a response piece to a play that was on at Melbourne Fringe called 19 Weeks, and in the play, it's a very sticky, complex, incredible space, this conversation. Basically there was an issue, but what came up, what I loved in Danica's response was she said, my kid has Down syndrome. So it was about a woman who terminated pregnancy, learning that the child would have Down syndrome. And that means she's in 90% of the Australian population. So only 10% of women at that stage. It's very complex. Please read it. It's amazing. On Witness and on Arts Hub, and there's really good conversation. And I'm like, man, I hope the writer doesn't double down because I want to see the next play. In fact, I would watch the film and the miniseries of that and read the book of it too, where two women who make two very different decisions about having that baby, you know, like. But what Danica said that I thought was so dope, which is just like, my kid has Down syndrome, but he's more similar to his brothers than other children with Down syndrome, because every kid or every person with Down syndrome is their own being, and they live in a culture and a family.
Yeah.
Ableism,
Yeah.
stigma. And it was really interesting. So we were going to talk about my next film project, and one of the stars of it is a young man with Down syndrome, and having a full sexy relationship with an able-bodied woman, which I know is going to cause controversy. But it was that sense of going, whoa, this is like one of those amazing taboos of what the stigma and what we believe is possible and impossible and right and wrong and ethics and our own bigotry and all that stuff. And it's that shock of recognition moment where you get to kind of feel and see, because we've been fed one thing for so long. And I was actually in the toilets thinking, we could do this now, because I often joke about, I can't wait till we have a white men's film festival. Where it's just we're going to just focus on white men's work in this one. And check out the thematic and what the sorts of things that they're centering on at the moment. But I mean, we could do it now and just break it all up and do the same thing back and forth, just go, because we'll see, I have those moments where I watch a certain genre of movie, and I've been watching a lot of teen movies because I'm going to mess with those tropes. It's terrifying. Of course it is. It's rapey. It's fat shaming. It's dark, in some points, and it's and finish it with a joke and a high five, and you're like, ah! And I find it so extraordinary because I go, this gaze is so clear to me. It's so clear. And I had my niece, who's a tall Samoan 15-year-old girl. She's like, I love Adam Sandler. And I was like, okay. And so we watched an Adam Sandler, I don't even know the name of it, but Salma Hayek's in it. And every time she arrives, it's just a shot of her boobs. And when she leaves, it's a shot of her ass. And I was like, so just pausing, just pause for a sec. And I was like, can we talk about it? Because it's so shocking. But for young people growing up, we're just eating it, we're just dealing with it. And then the thing that's really hard, even in the sort of this last play that was on at Melbourne Fringe, it's very difficult to talk to young people, particularly they're my boos, young adult, about what's missing, about erasure, about the erased stories, about who isn't, because they're just reading on the lines, they're not reading in between the lines, right? And so we have this culture of going, and then the young adult world of the fat kid, finds out, he's lovable or whatever fucking shit. It's it's amazing then the tokenism and the tropes that are just fed to kids so hard, where I'm just this is telling them, obviously it's about body fascism, it's about fascism and conformity, and this is what it is to be, and to be a man, to be a woman, to be hot, to be this, to be that, equals good, equals bad, equals,
It's so moralistic.
the villain, the and it's it's ground in, So
Yeah,
it's so straightforward for me, I feel, to just write work for and with the real people around me and their real experience. And, I can't believe it's radical. I mean, radical means root and truth, but to just put someone else as the love interest. I do all these auditions at the moment. The one area that I don't nab the audition is when they go, oh, yeah, candy bars, okay, cool. And I know I kill the audition, but when will a person my size, and I am small fat, obviously, get to be a love interest on Offspring with, whatever type of cisgendered whatever guy. Like, I'll be reading against these actors and I'm like, really? I mean, I've dated people like this or whatever. Not my favourite, but like, you know,
Yeah,
it's like our bodies are coded. My friend Kirina talks about it. She's of small stature. She's a dwarf, and she says her body is coded. Yet she brings her same body, like Kate Blanchett brings her same body to everything. But Kate Blanchett's allowed to be, you know, a spy and a villain and a this and a that. Whereas Kirina's read as disabled, read as something, a victim, you know, or she's under a toadstool. Like, there's only like 3 things she can play because of her body.
And when is that, you know, that's exactly right. And I mean, I think we've all probably felt that in terms of our identities. And it's like, yeah, it's kind of like recently, I don't know, there was a show that was called Dietland, which was, I wasn't going to talk about this, but anyway, that was a book by Sarah Ray Walker, and it's a fucking great book. And they got it up, they got it commissioned, it was on Foxtel or whatever, and there was a fat woman, and she stays fat. But it was still, and I have a lot of problems with the show, actually. They kind of really missed the mark. But, you know, it was meant to be this kind of empowered fat woman stays fat story, and like she kind of just unpacked, she was going to get, what's it called? What's that thing? Lap band. She was going. What's that thing that some people do? She was going to get weight loss surgery, and she meets this bunch of radical feminists, and they turn her around, and then, you know, she kind of is like, "Fuck the patriarchy," and like everyone wants to blow stuff up. I mean, it's awesome, but in the end, still within that context of this kind of empowered fat woman, her only sexual encounter is still date rape. She's never, you know, she's not allowed to be empowered in that way. She still struggles. And I think they were trying to talk about the perceptions of big people and how you're either fetishized or, you know, it's a mercy situation. And even within this context of like, yay, we've got a fat central character in a series on, you know, in America, it was still this kind of idea of a pity and kind of not quite feeling herself. And that's, you know, was this year, you know.
They can't change the mindset. So say on Tonightly, when I said I want to do this piece about nude bras, the executive producer got back to me, Andrew, he said, do you think men will understand this piece?
I mean, if we need to run the world in that way.
I was like, I don't know, Andrew. Did you know what a nude bra was? And he goes, not really. And I was like, of course, men don't wear nude-coloured underwear, do they? I said, I'll be honest, I don't fucking care. And then it was really interesting, and we sort of had this same refrain, like, I got this Black Panther script and I was unhappy with it, and I said, look, black women are not going to laugh at this. And he goes, but it's not just for black women. I'm going, okay, let me get this sort you out for a sec. So black women never get to laugh at Australian television because the joke's never for them. You'll laugh at the stupidest shit. I've seen your show. You're going to laugh anyway. So black women, I need to rewrite this for my community. And it was like this mind-boggling concept that it would be funnier, and it was.
It was really funny.
And it was like really difficult to work in that space. Like, I'm just always like so shocked at how these folks, my mum, I can't read it out, but my mum wrote the funniest review of the show, much based on what she saw as the deficiencies in the key white men that run it. And I was like weeing myself with laughter. And she's like, why would you work with them? I was like, Mum, like, check out Australia. There's no such thing as Nirvana here. We're not running networks yet. I'm getting there. I just wanted to like have a play, meet some cool people, and I did. I met an amazing camera woman, an editor, and it's like this really strange space. And even recently, like, I'm touring my show Australian Booty next year, around regional Victoria, and there are no cultural safety frameworks, you know. But I said to Dale, who's my tour manager, who I know have known for a while, I said, you know, is there cultural safety frameworks? And I just had a really bad time on my last gig on the main stage. I need to make sure there's some safety involved and people understand. And he goes, do you think it's still a thing?
Yeah.
And I was like, still a thing? When was the last time you had anyone like me tour with Regional Arts Victoria?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's that thing when you try and navigate an industry, right? And like you said earlier about crews, and like I think when, you know, I work with Jane Morley, my producer over there, we made Monster Grad together and Nothing to Lose. And when we, you know, because we were working with queer bodies, because we were working with fat people, we were really, really, really prioritised, of course, working with women and queer crew and keeping it as kind of grounded in that, in terms of who we worked with technically, because I think that's such an important thing when you're making film work or theatre work, that you have that support system that fucking understands why you need to make sure that the plinths are reinforced, for example, or, you know, that people are lit properly, or and not having to kind of constantly have to be like, can we just do this? I mean, when you work, Triana, what are you, in terms of your crew, are you like a one-person gig, or do you tend to work?
No, I share the workload, of course. Yeah, like, look, I find that question interesting because I honestly, like, I was just talking to you before about the importance for me to work with people who are on, like, my same page visually, because I have, like, a very sort of, like, unique sort of, like unorthodox sort of style, I guess, especially with editing. But I was saying that I always find it interesting that, especially when I go to, like, sometimes I get like like someone in Sydney, like a pop star will be like, oh, you know, can you make a music video? And they don't know what I've done before. They don't care. That's fine. I just go there. And then because I get to pick my crew, a lot of times I have like a music producer or something come in and be like, oh, it's an all-female crew. And I'm like, oh, yeah, true. And what I find is that I actually prefer, like, my decision is not really a decision that has to do with like, oh, I need the crew to be this way because visibility, I mean, obviously there's an element of that, and like that thing that you said at the start of like doing an opening and being like, come in, like, let's infiltrate. But I think a much more important item for me is that the crew that I work with needs to be people who are self-made, because the amount of times that I've been at the start of my career working with cis white men, and then they will come up to me with the most like, so there's no water. Okay, cinematographer, why are you coming to me with a problem? And like just very like kind of like entitled, like, oh, like you're not the director, you're my mom. So yeah, you know, like, and I'm just like, sorry, like honestly, like living, like nothing even to do with like politics, just like, yes, entitlement, and like I don't feel like, I need to feel like I'm surrounded with people who are like creative and like problem solvers and like think three-dimensionally and like, you know, like get it, like they have common sense, that they will not say stupid shit even if they don't know the person that is in front of them, you know what I mean? Like if it's a fat person, don't say, oh, like how many months, you know what I mean? Like just seriously, like the amount of things that my conversations as a director on the set end up being like educating people on how to live their lives. And it's just a waste of my time as a director, because directors, it's like, you know, time is money. And if I have to waste my time like telling Tom to like not say they like that to black people, then like that's a waste of my money and my time, so get out of my set.
Yeah.
So that's why I work with predominantly queer women and people of color on my sets, because they're, you know, like we know how to do things. Like, you know, we've been self-made for so long. We don't need like someone else to come and like micromanage everything. Yeah. You know, if like, I think like the number one thing that I would say is that when I'm working, the few times that I've worked with like cis white men, any time that the camera is not super, super, super expensive, they're like, oh, we can't do this. It's not gonna be a good music video because the budget is only $5,000, and so we can't get like all this like list of like $10,000 worth of equipment. And I'm like, is that how you measure art? You know, like what exactly? Yeah, you know, you can make a good music video on $5.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so I think, yeah, like that's kind of like the reason why. Yeah,
the cultural institutions too, because I've worked with white women who have the same mindset, and I think it's about how you get trained, and then not being able to break that. We used to call it rock and rolling when we do shows. Just the lighting desk person that, can you rock and roll it or not? Because that, you know, the school, NIDA, you know, VCA, Queensland art schools are all like, well, I need exactly this amount of time and I need to know before, you know, like there's a whole structure. But it's like, that's really good. You can do that, but can you also rock and roll it? And it's really interesting how the institutions don't teach that, right? They don't teach, you've got this, you've got this, you've got this, you know. Make it good, make it strong. And I mean, half the time in the ABC, you're really doing that. Like it's really, you don't have anything. And all you can work on is whether the strength of the concept works. But the hard thing about even co-producing or making work there is you just don't get the autonomy. So it's like somebody else, and like some of the sketches, I was like, whoa, that is not at all right. Out in the world. Looks like it's mine. Not mine. Yeah.
I mean, I think ultimately it's about, you know, I personally think that like any good set where you're filming or directing or whatever you're doing needs to have a very horizontal sense of teamwork. And the problem is that like most cis white men or people in general, I guess white people or cis people have a very sense of entitlement, particularly in Australia. And so what that means is that when they are on a set, you can feel their egos.
Yes.
Like,
Really true.
it's like literally they see a set not as a place of working together or collaborating or creating art together, but also they see it as a perfect place for them to assert the power and their entitlement and like authority. And it's just like, again, a waste of time / boring / just bad art because everyone was in a bad mood because, you know, like Tom kept like throwing orders at someone that they should have not been doing that to, you know?
I mean, how have you found that, Sam? Like, when you work, do you get a chance to, I mean, I don't want to stay on this too much, but do you get a chance to curate who you work with? Did you do that with the ABC? Because I've known people who have made work with the ABC and they're like, you know, they can do whatever the fuck they like to what you've done, especially if you've, you know, I mean, luckily when we made Monster Grow, they gave us quite a lot of autonomy and we could just do what we wanted, which was pretty rare in my understanding of making things with the ABC. Did they allow you to do things like choose your crews and the way you wanted to work and things like that?
Sure, yeah. I had a bit of a mixed experience, I would say, and my directing career isn't as long as my career in the screen industry and as long as your careers. So I guess, you know, I have limited experience, but first time working with a broadcaster as well, and I did get to pick my crew. I had, I knew someone who was funded under the same initiative who had a lot of trouble in that respect, trying to put forward someone who didn't have broadcast credits, and they wouldn't let her choose that person. And so I think it's always going to be mixed depending on the person you're dealing with. Look, for the most part, I was, really happy, and I've, this might not be a popular thing to say, but I had a couple of really lovely veteran cis white males on my team, and they were, they exceeded my expectations really, even though I knew they were lovely and talented people in their interactions with the people that I had in my show, because I felt like I was really putting myself out there in that sense. It was a very personal topic for me and clearly for the people that I was interviewing, and simply their level of experience, even technical stuff aside, they were able to interact with the interviewees in between takes and show a real interest and put forward a very empathetic. So, you know, I guess I come at a very different perspective in that I think it's really easy to pigeonhole types of people, and even, you know, my life as a trans person, you know, it's always, you know, discussions about men and women and men and women and men and women and men and women, and it drives me nuts because my experience has been different from most people. You know, I don't believe that there's as much difference between men and women as what our culture will have us believe, and so I find that kind of thing really interesting. And also, I'm really going on a tangent here, but you know, like you said earlier, Candy, about having a men's session at like a conference about what kind of film projects they're interested in. You know, I find I'm really at odds when I go to, say, a women's brunch, and I love it, and I always have a great time. But for me, I kind of go, isn't this just kind of upholding the gender binary and furthering this notion that men and women are so different from each other, yet at the same time being in full awareness of the fact that you do need to, you know, lift up marginalised voices, and women have historically had it so much harder than men. So yeah, I feel like there's a solution that we haven't found yet, such as women's brunches, where supportive men can come along and not take the microphone but still be there if they're in support of women. You know, like I feel like, it's problematic. Anyway, I've gone on a big rant and tangent, but where do we start?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm aware that we've probably need to have a look at everyone's work. So we've got some examples. Candy, we're going to start with you. So we're going to show your work, King Shit and Lady Muck, decolonise the fuck out. I just sounded so white when I said that. Decolonise the fuck out. Can you talk? Do you want to play
context.
it and then?
Have you got the slides or just the?
No, the film.
Okay.
Do you want to talk over it though? Or
Sure.
do you want us to watch it?
Well, it's really video art, and it's
Oh, it's very pink then. Oh no, we're good.
Yeah, and it was a commission by Campbelltown Arts Centre to do sort of whatever I wanted to do for their 30th birthday celebration. And when I was coming up with it, it was like the thick of the Harry and Meghan Markle wedding. And for me, growing up in Campbelltown, I grew up in western suburbs. I was born in Dandenong and then moved to Campbelltown. The Princess Di and, you know, fairy tales. I had a princess cake. And I realised we hadn't really learnt about our colonial history at all, or mine as a South African woman. So I wanted to make something where it was sort of dress-ups, like a kid, very naive. That's why I'm in my undies. And queer the space as well, and sort of like make fun of the idea of royalty. Satirise it, but like in that jar I'm holding, there were big portrait stills that went with this work, A2 portrait stills, and I'm holding a small severed white penis. And in some videos I did on Instagram, it harks back to the concept of Saatchi Baartman, or the Black Venus, where the French actually cut up her body and put her labia on display as exhibition, and the way black women's bodies have been put on exhibition. And actually I just spoke to someone from Melbourne Museum, like I think in the last month, they've actually removed every single human remain. So now our Melbourne Museum no longer has any native body parts on show, which is a triumph, and also terrifying that it's the year 2018. So this work was harking back to this, and is the video of Lady Muck, did that show?
No.
Oh.
Do I have to click it?
click it.
I always forget the clicker.
With Lady Muck, so I wanted to do a king and a queen, but also my mum used to call us King Shit or Lady Muck when we didn't do our chores. And it's a dystopic sort of Afrofuturism, like, in a way, I probably would look a lot like other than maybe having more ginger, which I thought about making king shit ginger, but then I was like, maybe it's too direct, like Meghan Markle and Harry's children. So Lady Muck wears this beautiful blonde stole, which is made from the scalping of heads of young children from Norway or Scandinavia, she's not sure. Practices that were done to native peoples, ornamental heads, and of course the white baby is sort of, it's making a direct sort of point about not only sort of the Madonna current situation of adopting, you know, kids from Africa, but also the way the royals who had colonised Africa always made a big thing about going to African hospitals and taking pictures with babies. Yeah, so that's sort of like the background to this work. And I think it'll be showing at Mona in January as well. And I'm going to kind of play with the clip a bit more. The characters are pretty fully formed, so I may perform as well. Lady Muck's sort of talking about, she's named the baby Lucky, and the fact that, you know, I grew up only seeing black people on World Vision ads or on envelopes when I got on planes, so I wanted to flip that, essentially. That was the way.
Thank you. We didn't have the stills, but yeah, we just keep it visual and moving on this one. So we're going to show two of Sam's pieces. I'm just a bit aware of time because we can talk, it turns out, all of us. So are you okay if I just show unboxed?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yep.
So this is 6 excerpts. I can never say that word. Excerpts. Excerpts from Unboxed in a row. Do you want to talk about it before we show it? Or
Yeah, just briefly, I suppose. Yeah, this is a series that is currently available on ABC iView, and it's also playing in full at Tilde, if that's how you say it, Tilde Film Festival in Melbourne in about a month's time. So you can see it on the big screen there if you decide to. And this is about transgender and gender diverse artists from the line is from around Australia, but really just the eastern states, because that's what we had the budget to do, and Adelaide, where I come from. How art has played a role in, I guess, both assisting them in their journey of their gender and kind of how their gender informs their art as well. So it's very different for each person. So here's just some excerpts from those.
okay.
If
We need
someone
sound up.
at a young age told me it's okay to put on a dress and call yourself like a girl, I wouldn't have had to go through all of those hardships. Dancing has helped me build a better relationship with my body, because the way that I move my body, I love.
I came across the Pieta statue that Michelangelo did, and it's the statue of Mary holding Jesus, so he's sort of in that point of death, ready to be reborn. When he first carved that piece, man-woman piece, was all out of one piece of marble. So for me, it's like, well, I'm one piece and these two genders or multiple genders are all in here together.
You know, up until quite recently, I didn't know that I was allowed to be who I am. Art has helped me find people that share the same values as me. And I found the confidence that I needed to exist in the world. I'm heaps happier, and I found that everything in my life has improved. My friendships are better, relationship with my family is closer, my art looks nicer. Might not be related, but you know, I'm a lot happier.
Black is definitely a persona that I'm striving towards turning into a reality, basically. The goal is to eventually be living in more of a gender ambiguous kind of space, so like not neatly masculine, not neatly feminine, just like an in-between. Because that to me feels most authentic.
In my newest first piece, I have the gender identity theme running through it, but it's mainly about, not hiding, not being ashamed and not being embarrassed about who I am. And it's taken me ages to accept who I am, so, why am I going to hide that? I want the world to see me for who I am. No shame in pride, boy, show it off, take a stand. Because music has had a big impact on my life, I want my music to have an impact on someone else's life. That's what I'd like to do.
Cycling uphill today, a guy passes. Hi, mate. Nice of him. It's what you do, to be nice. But I'm not his mate. Never was his mate, even to my mates. So don't call me mate. It wrenches me inside. All it assumes wrapped in a happy high. Guys greet guys with it. It's safe, close as they get to being nice. But don't call me mate. In Lycra, I look guy. My whole body is guy. The way I hold myself, square jaw, thick calves, hunch so ungirl, but I'm a girl. So don't call me mate.
Thank you. That person's smile at the end just kills me.
She's just got the most amazing on-screen presence. She's, her episode, I think, I find it so hard to pick a favourite, but I think hers might be my favourite. I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm going to tell Bo you said that.
What did you say?
I said I'm going to tell Bo you said
that.
Oh, right. Okay, so now we're going to... Sorry, I'm moving through this really quickly, but we've actually really already talked for like a really long time. I didn't realise, because it's so interesting, isn't it? So we're going to see Triana's unreleased video, which is being released tomorrow, actually, isn't it? Can I just remind Tech to not play it on the live stream?
If someone at a young age told me...
I clicked. So this is a unreleased video for various arses featuring Sophie Grofie, right? Do you want to tell us about it?
Sure. So, I think various artists is talking about new diasporas worldwide, and so there's there's a lot of people of color, there's a lot of people who are, I guess, new ways of perceiving empowerment of people of color, and I think of queer narratives and non-binary people. And so when we did this music video, basically I wanted to explore the idea of a club scenario in which everyone actually feels free from the male gaze or any sort of restrictive and oppressive gazes, actually. I'm going to take away the male thing and I'm going to say any oppressive gaze.
Too many more words to be able to say that.
And I think what I wanted to explore in this video is the idea of what it's like to portray a club where no one is watching you, and whoever dares watch you, you're actually watching them and you're the whole time in control. So that was sort of like the idea behind this film clip. It was about the gaze, being liberated from that gaze, being empowered from that, away from it, and just celebrating music at its best, which is music making you free and making you dance like no one's watching. So that's what this video is about.
Great.
Yep.
And we're going to play it, right? Yeah. Okay, so it's not on the live stream. That's so amazing. I love it. I love various asses. They're brilliant. I thought also, if we've got time, I might just show a couple of my works, if that's okay. I'm going to show the trailer for Monster Gra. I was going to show the opening of Acapulco, but I don't think we've got time. What is the time? It's like, how much, sorry? Oh, yeah, okay. Look, I won't do that. I'm going to just skip through that one. And I'll show you the trailer to Monster Gra. Oh, that's the opening of Acapulco. Hang on. Oh, yeah. So this is Monster Gra we made as part of ABC iView's Love Bite series, which was commissioned around Mardi Gras time because it was the 40th anniversary of Mardi Gras. And they commissioned 10 queer artists to make a 5-minute spot for iView. And Jane and I made Monster Gra, which is about a Sydney party that kind of is aims to unpack and disrupt the what's the word, boring nature of Mardi Gras, the capitalist sellout of it all. So this is the trailer. No, it's not. That's the beginning of Acapulco. Sorry. There we go. Can we have the sound up, please? Louder if we can.
We exist, we find each other, we make our worlds, and we always have.
Monster Gra has always been punk in its ethos. It's always meant to be a bit angry.
It's an anarchic space, it's a playful space. The monster is a trickster, the monster asks questions, kind of like a collective beast that belches, that farts.
It is like a fungus that's all connected, that stays kind of dormant for most of the year and then just erupts into this thing that is always unpredictable.
So that's our trailer, and that's still available. It's still, I was going to say available on iTunes, like RuPaul or something. Still on ABC iView. And leading up to tonight's screening of Nothing to Lose, I thought I would show 3 little portraits of the cast of that. So I'm going to show that now. They're only little short ones. But these are 3 cast members of the film. Oh, whoops, what did I do? There's Ali's thigh. Can I do it? Go again?
Being in a fat male gay body adds a whole nother layer to the essence of how I relate to things like dance, things like the gay world.
They're very short. Do I have to click each one? Oh my God, I'm so technically challenged at the moment.
We all have this bulk, and I'm trying to look at it in a kind of more neutral way and see it as an instrument or a tool, and not just the way society sees me or the way I think of me. I'm trying to get beyond that, get past that.
Oh, there was another one. Hang on. Was it first? Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God.
Even though most of the time I really love my body and I still feel really comfortable in it, I still struggle a lot, and I don't know how I will ever really push through that. But for me, being a queer fat femme, it's resisting the temptation to look and act and fuck a certain way. And I like to package it into one big unapologetic body.
Okay. So, I wanted to talk more about our work, but we have run out of time, haven't we? How long have we got for questions, Ari? Okay, so 15 minutes for questions. And there was so much I didn't get to in our conversation. I literally have pages. But, you know, thank you guys for chatting about what we did. So does anyone have any questions? Just raise your hand. Oh.
Don't be shy, the first one's always hardest.
just wondering, is that working? It is. I'm just wondering if you feel at all optimistic about the future for more broad stream media. You were talking about your experience of working in it to some extent, and you're at the ABC. Do you have any feeling of optimism about, marginalised inclusion in mainstream media? From my end, as someone who isn't terribly, if I'm really honest, isn't terribly involved in sort of this, because of the way I live my life and my own personal interests, the main media I absorb is mainstream media. And, I'm dying to see more examples of things like Dietland, even with its shortcomings. So do you feel optimistic at all about that?
I think there is an increased focus lately among, my experience, the South Australian Film Corporation, even the ABC are fact-finding about, how many people from minority groups are in front of and behind the camera. So there isn't a renewed focus, and I think that gives me hope. I still think for a while there'll be some level of gatekeeping, for lack of a better word, in the sense of, trying to control narratives to fit the stereotype. Like one example might be, in my process, I was trying to be coached into showing before and after photos of the trans people, and I absolutely stood up to that, and I said I'm not doing it because that's absolutely, is this still the 90s? I think we do really have to stand up for ourselves and in order to tell those authentic stories.
For me, it's about pushing conversations a bit further. I think when you start to engage with mainstream media, I always feel incredibly frustrated that I have to backpedal with my politics and start at a 101 level. And I feel like I'm just constantly saying the same fucking thing. And I can't seem to. And I understand it's about accessibility. It's about introducing concepts to people that they might not have thought about that. But I find, for me, that's really, really frustrating, is this idea of, keeping it. So when I pitch work or when I want to do work, it tends to, I feel like it sort of gets dumbed down and I'm backpedaling. And so that's kind of a frustrating experience when working with like broader media. So I tend to want to make the films I want to make. Like I had, when I was pitching years ago, when I was pitching a film called Fierce Flesh, which was about fierce fat femmes, they wanted to have a diet narrative and they wanted a journey of self-love. So they wanted me to find someone that hated themselves.
Weight loss journey.
Yeah, but by the end of it, they loved themselves through body politics. And I was just like, nah. So that's something, I mean, you...
Yeah, look, I was in London for 8 days working with diverse folks in the sort of curation art and visual arts and theatre spaces, and I saw a play that came from the Bush Theatre to West End, and it was a really interesting existentialist work, actually. It was spoken when it was a black man. The black patriarchy was a bit too strong for me because I didn't see enough femme work, but what I found extraordinary was this play that came from the bush to somewhere like would be MTC or whatever, ends with him, he's going around about what black man's allowed to write about in London right now. And he says, I don't make theatre, I make lyrical theatre. It's this, it's that, it's sick. And if you don't like my big black play, you can suck my big black. And the lights go out. And that was the last line of the play. And I was like, how far are we from that in Australia? How far are we? And we are quite far. And the people that run our industry in the mainstream, because we're talking about that right now, have been in the industry for 35, 45, 55, 65 years. They don't have the capacity to think in a wholesome, intersectional, loving and powerful way about our communities. They do not. If they did, the industry would already look extremely different. The Melbourne Museum looks extremely different because the CEO has given the First Peoples and Genevieve Grieve the position of second in charge. Jacob Boehm is an Indigenous artistic director of Yirramboi Festival. He goes around to houses like Arts Centre, MTC, Malthouse, wherever, and says, hand over the keys, we're going to run our festival. So MTC, Malthouse and Arts House said, hand over the keys, what sort of narrative is that? We need to be involved. And he said, it is a black curated and run festival. Hand over the keys. No nothing, no compromise. So they declined. Hand over the fucking keys. We're not looking for solidarity, we're looking for accomplices. You watch the door while I go to the safe. If you're not up for that relationship, there is no relationship to be had. I'm not interested in edging towards something through tokenism and through half-baked ideas, because it actually does worse and it's more dangerous than it does good. I want to see people being their unique selves in all of their incredible wonderfulness or fucking boringness or idioticness. I just need to see 100 years of something else. And I don't think the mainstream, I feel it's very top surface. And I think that's dangerous, because at the end of the day, who's editing, who's directing, whose voice is it, whose play is it, who's curating it? I'm not here to teach you about myself. Yeah, that educational stuff isn't I want to vomit in my mouth a little bit when people of colour, who often do say to me, I need to teach white folks what it's like. I was like, ugh. No, I want to hear from you, and if that means you're angry, if that means you want to make a film, 2-hour film about how angry you are about how you've been marginalised in your life, I don't want to see Il Bidjari's version of Cats. I want to see you unapologetically, and the mainstream are not playing that game.
No.
Do you have any optimism?
Yes. My optimism exists in the edges, in the curiosity, in the folks that go looking outside of the mainstream. I've got to say, I teach children, so they're real, and I'm excited that I'm their teacher. The optimism I have is the fact that I go to Matthew Flinders College in Geelong, and there are 2 gay relationships and a trans boy in my class. That is a difference. Outwardly talking about it, writing fucking love poetry to each other, I'm down for that shit. That is my optimism. You now exist in a way. When I was at school, we weren't allowed to exist, and we weren't open or etc. And they talk about, the books they've read and the people they're following on Instagram who haven't got their film deal yet, but they might.
Yeah.
So that's where I am, completely in the underground, completely in the DIY space. Yeah.
I mean, should we let's ask one more question. How are we going? Yeah?
We've got time for one more question.
Okay.
In that vein, Candy, I quite often think about, I'm sort of formulating this as I think, but the heading of body politics, and what is it as fat people, and particularly under the vein of nothing to lose, queer fat people, what do we stand to lose under a co-opted heading such as body positivity or body politics?
Oh, I have a lot to say about this.
We were talking about this before. Like diversity of unique, like a uniqueness. I think it's so hard because, I like to call myself, a queer radical feminist unicorn. Those words all work for me. Audre Lorde wrote The Black Unicorn at the turn of the 70s, and everything she writes, I feel like she's writing to my soul personally. And so in being so different and being on the margins, we seek each other out. But I know a lot of people, like I was saying, I was in a play in my underwear recently with the incredible Bessie Hollins, who's on Wentworth, and she's doing a show at STC at the moment, and we were cast as the Ugly Sisters, and I was like, I'm going to be in my underwear? No one's going to believe that. And yeah, funnily enough, because the hot sister was this like tiny weeny size 8 sister, and we were all on stage, my community were like, were we supposed to buy you guys were ugly? And I was like, yeah. But then that audience from behind me at one point, because Bessie does not like body positivity, she finds it very triggering. She's like, shut up with your That's All Fat podcast, Candy, simmer down. I was like, I find it, I love it, I like to listen to it. She's like, not me, no thank you, fuck off. And so I love that. I'm like, get more fat people in shows together. Whatever could happen. We could
Yeah.
all have fucking different opinions about every fucking thing.
Well, that
You know
was
what I mean?
That was what was interesting in Nothing to Lose. I mean, you know, we spent 3 years in a room together, and there was a lot of yes, we were one giant big fat family. Yes, we were, and we understood the importance of what we were making. But, you know, there were some major fucking fights. And, you know, unfortunately the camera wasn't there for most of them, which is like, but, you know, they did happen. But what I wanted to say to answer that as well was, for me, I really struggle around this idea of like, I think we were going to talk about it, but we ran out of time. This idea of assimilation and losing our sense of identity through visibility and inclusion, and that is one of my biggest fears. I think, of course, we want to move to a place where fat, queer bodies, you know, women, people of colour, queer bodies, trans bodies are more everyday. We see them, but not at the expense of erasure of our histories and our stories. And navigating that is something that I constantly worry, I worry about it. It's like, you know, I mean, we're so fucking far from that, right? Let's be real. It's not like it's going to happen tomorrow. But I also just, within the work that I make, I feel like it's so important, yes, to be this flag-waving, radical fat feminist, but also, yeah, that alienates the people that might actually want to need to engage with this sort of stuff. So how do we navigate that? That's something I find really hard to know what to do, actually. And that comes down to that's also like mainstream media stuff as well. So, you know, there's an open conversation starter that we can't have because we've run out of time. Does anyone else have, do you have something to say to that, Triana, or anyone have?
I kind of wanted to answer the other question, if that's okay, in terms of kind of like what everyone has been saying is definitely on point, and I agree with what everyone else has been saying about it. I think there has been a lot of change and there's been a lot of voices being heard. I think definitely technology making our work really accessible and being a very big platform has meant that people can actually see our work now and be like, wow, that's great. And it has nothing to do with it's no longer gate kept, you know? And I think the really important thing to understand for me is that at the end of the day, I see all of the problems that we're talking about relate to one thing, and that is the fact that Australia is a colonial country. And until that doesn't change, nothing is going to change, because they purposely want the media to not have any of these voices. You know, they purposely want, I mean, we've recently seen that with the ABC, to what extent the politics use the media to make people believe one thing or another, you know, as propaganda. So I think until there is no treaty, until there's no balance of powers, until Indigenous people are not given a bigger voice and a bigger platform, then unfortunately it will be an absolute privilege of me to say that things are getting better. So I think it's really important that everyone remembers that we should all be fighting towards one goal. And of course, like the work that we're all doing individually in one way or another decolonizes the space, whereas it is in terms of race or like body positivity. But I think it's really important to remember that until we don't get that level of decolonization in the government and in power, then it's not going to trickle down to the media, and it's not going to trickle down to the Uber drivers, so it's not going to trickle down to the next generation. So I think, yeah, that's really important to keep in mind. We're all decolonizing together, hopefully, you know, yeah.
I wanted to add to the one about bodies too. It's really interesting for me because I just did a whole series with a play called The Fall, All Roads Lead to Decolonisation, which was incredible work, very queer work that came from South Africa to the Arts Centre. And I did work with teenagers, and I find it really interesting, the ableism and fat shaming, fat-phobic fat hell that we go through. I can talk about race now and they can kind of comprehend it. But what's really great is to talk about fat, because they all go, what? You know, it's like everybody's implicated, and I was recently talking to a close family member about like just to like call her on the fat shaming, and she couldn't comprehend what I was talking about, and I was like, choose kindness, and it was like this really weird thing of going, it's almost like, but it's not mean. Yeah, it is mean. You know, like there's this, we're still not there. There's this really bizarre stuff. And like today in my class, I talk about when you introduce yourself, we often nod to our fathers. So I say, Candy Bowers, that's a nod to my father. So please, as we introduce ourselves, I want you to tell me a bit about your mother and your grandmother. So I might just say I'm the daughter of Lynn and the granddaughter of Helena. It's like just balances. Where was I born? Know the Indigenous ground you were born on. Just balance, just a little check and a balance. And one of the kids, we're moving along, he goes, I'm the daughter of, and everyone burst out laughing. Because he was like, I mean the son, because he'd just heard all these women say the daughter, and I was like, you can be the daughter too. And I always slip in this just slippery stuff around gender. And it's so interesting how deep and embedded all this cognitive stuff is, you know? I was like, okay, I'm going to be Mr. Nasty Lady. And like 8-year-olds go, what? And it's like, well, I'm an actor. I play all the roles and I feel like I'm all the things. I'm very slippery in that way. And I was like, you can be too. And they're like, what? You know, and like they're 8. You know? I was like, I'm a big, fat, beautiful movie star. And they're like, what? They just don't hear it. Yeah. And it's really not even, for me, that's not even positivity. It's just speaking it. It's just saying things. It's not even going, which makes me better than the skinny movie. No, it's actually just saying it and just owning it. And that is the revolution that I'm sort of interested in because, yeah, wow, we've built a real fucked up hierarchy in Hollywood, and we all know that ends in death. I went to NIDA. There's lots of bodies on that ground. If I didn't define myself for myself, I'd be crunched into other people's fantasies for me and eaten alive. Audre Lorde. How many actors I know that have been eaten alive because of this shit?
Yeah.
Obviously, not the way to live life, you know?
Well, that was an amazing ending. Thank you, Candy Bowers. And we're done with timer.
Can I please get you to put your hands together for our amazing panel? Kelly Jean, Candy, Triana, and Sam.